Check one, two, check one, two. It is August 20th in the year 2016. So as you take a look at the headline, don't worry about the video and what the video looks like. What's important is what I'm actually saying. That's what's important. Okay. So came, drove to Alamosa today to unplug from the Crestone matrix, the Crestonian matrix. And so that was the point to unplug after yesterday, although I put most of it on Substack rather than here on YouTube. So I'm not going to be repeating every one of those details. Let me go ahead and change my position here for just a minute so I could get some better lighting here with what sunlight has done. Free podcast at McDonald's, but the audio there was too loud. And Elma typically is not my most creative place for doing videos. I've actually done thousands of podcasts in Costilla County when I was promoting people's right to live off the grid. And that was definitely probably one of the biggest mistakes I've ever made because I became an enemy of the state. And actually resulted in me, a former landowner, becoming homeless, what you might call a bum. And our society now is so evil, so satanic, so bloodthirsty. It doesn't care about former landowners who actually have a career out of stand up for people's land rights. So it's a selfish society, it's a satanic society. Those are the parents. Those are the people with the resources, the people that are selfish and self serving, while those of us that made the sacrifice for America are next to be sacrificed. People like me, actual truthers, actual real freedom fighters, we are the last men to exist on your planet till the robots start arriving. So take note that we fought for your freedoms, we were thrown away, and bad people were brought to rule the earth. And everything was done to keep them in power. So let's start talking about today in Alamosa. 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 Went mostly good. Getting resources, going to the thrift store, buying some things for $20, but without getting into that. And I met Michael. I bumped into Michael. Michael was with us in Costilla County in 2014, 2015, when we were documenting the people living on their own land that were white off gridders, that were low income, when the draconian evil dark crystal system came to kick them off their land. That was me and him with our cameras documenting for the entire world, for the media, for the Colorado media. And they actually sided not with us, but with law enforcement and the cops who made these low income white off gridders homeless and in the streets. We were there to save them. We were there to document it. And we were there also pushed off ourselves without anybody caring about our plight for being the independent reporters who took the bullet where the real reporters were standing with the cops who now in Costilla County are under indictment from the Colorado Bureau of Investigation for abuse of corpse, for doing drugs, for basically being the cartel. So this is the reality 10 years later. I stood up for people's rights. The media did not stand up for their rights, but they're not going to be accountable for their actions, nor is the American left or right going to be accountable for their actions and how we ended up in this particular situation that we're in. And until people start being accountable, until people start being responsible, until people start being appreciative and grateful for the freedom fighters that are around their own country, the real patriots, we're going to keep going deeper and deeper into slavery until we are the products. And that's sad because this person who was attacking me in the parking lot was homeless. This guy who was attacking me in the parking lot of Walmart was saying that I and Michael were the problem in Colorado. Me and a black guy. Me and a black guy in Colorado are being accosted in the Walmart parking lot by a homeless guy who thinks that we are the source of the problem. And this is actually what motivated people to attack me in New Mexico. They were having the same archonic infection, alien, mind parasite, mind invasion, implanted thought psychosis that we, strangers to this guy, based on how we looked, were the source of all this guy's problems, which is really crazy because my whole life was defending that guy's right to live off the grid. What would a spiritualist say or a psychic say looking at this? You brought upon yourself for helping the wrong people. You help people that hate you, and you failed every one of the tests that was shown. There would be Chloe one time when I'm talking with Chloe and Hiram, right? And I'm getting ready to welcome new viewer. I got a lot of energy for you today and a new T-shirt that's very representative. I'm literally walking around with a meme, and it's awesome. So I'll follow my intuition and I'll go to the thrift store, and I'll look for a T-shirt that'll basically be the sigil that I'm looking for. And so Chloe and Hiram Hiram, in the military, went to Afghanistan, then Chloe. Just because I'm different, I have a father somewhere else, instead of focus on the issue of off good rights, your first question is, so what's your opinion on women? Because that is basically where the left is. Are you like an oppressor or something? Like, talk about mentally retarded. I'd like to like ask her if she knows how to count. 2 + 2 = 4. Not likely. And so that would have been the warning sign for me to get out, not help those people. And had I followed that direction from God, I would still be a landowner today in Pagosa Springs. If I just minded my own business and kept my nose clean and wasn't trying to come to the aid of a military family or a lady asking me what my opinion is on women just because my skin's brown, if I just listened to the warning signs that she was a Nazi, then I would have gotten away from them and I never would have gotten involved in the Costilla County land rights. And then I would have never become an enemy of the state. Remember, all my problems come from 10 years ago in Costilla County, going over there, standing up for their right to live off the grid. And then eventually, because I was bragging, I was showing on YouTube where I was living. I had a shed, I had a yurt, I had a loft, I had it all. And who visited me in the 4 years in which I had my own land? Some lady who went to Iraq, who just came over to break my heart for no whatsoever, never saw again beyond 2016. So in those 4 years of having my own land, where I could have created my own family, could have had my own wife, could have had my own child, I sat there and predicted the future of America and continue to reach millions and millions of people on my own land. The world showed, kind of like those spiritual masters that came before me, that it was more interested in crucifying me than being my friend. And in fact, they were jealous. They were jealous. They were jealous that I was able to accomplish a feat like that, to create my own content on YouTube, to make money from AdSense, and make my own land payments like a god in the making. And it was all taken away. And that's what these kids need to understand, that we used to have freedoms in America. And now those freedoms are going away. Okay. So we were in the parking lot today at Walmart, like I said, and this guy comes up who's in this RV who says, "We are the problem. We are the problem with Alamosa. Me and this black man, we are the problem with America. We are the problem with Alamosa." So, so I'll tell you what I did. I did raise my voice. Yes, I did. And I circled him like a wolf for about a minute, and they called the police. They called people with guns. And for no reason, because I'm standing up for myself. And I'm telling you, that's crazy. But we were smart enough to get out of Dodge, to get out of there, before it got crazy. We weren't trying to push it. We weren't trying to wait for the cops, but here we go. We've got with the vest. And it's weird because we're talking about it at that second. Alamosa has become like this totalitarian police state with a lot of these different, because of course you have a rising crime element because the causations, different city, different story. Mm. And this is an incident where I didn't have a body cam going. I didn't have a camera with me. It's just me and Michael. Ever heard of that phrase where two or more gather? Michael, it's just me and Michael. Ever heard of that phrase where two or more gather? Michael is a good spiritual person. And before I bumped into Michael when I was in Walmart, I was tearing up in the store. Just feeling the emotions of all the people around me and just feeling the craziness because that place is socially is if I energetically is continuing to go down. Yeah, I don't really want to talk about the next part of the headline, but unfortunately, because of the turmoil within society right now and the types of things that we're seeing in the news, but that is part of the agenda. It's easier to be afraid than trust someone, but in the end, that's what the system is creating everywhere in the world in which we're hooked to these devices. This is not just happening here, it's happening elsewhere. So whatever Facebook's doing with the manipulations that I've been talking about on a regular basis, this is not new. This is just basically what we're dealing with. So like I said, I was having a mostly good day, and then this guy comes out of nowhere with his RV, and that's the thing. That's what makes it difficult to help these people. They're in that situation. They got it all wrong as to I don't know whether they thought we were drug dealers or what, but he definitely thought the worst. Now, when I was getting water over there, my tires skidded a little bit, and then the little girl started running. And I think that they're telling their kids to be afraid of me in some cases. I don't know, possibly, but I think it's unfortunate. But I think it happened from the incident a month ago. So I guess I'm lucky that I can be here. But I know that that was happening in Mesquite, Texas. Mesquite, Texas, I would go in and out, and I would go in and out and keep my eyes to myself and that type of a thing. But in the beginning, they seemed really nice. But I knew, that the close, if they were to find out maybe what I stood for, which they found out later through the podcast, but maybe a little bit more about the background and that type of a thing. And they were from Oklahoma, so the energetics basically of that area in Texas were real, real bad. And the types of we're in between eclipses here, total solar eclipse and a lunar eclipse. Therefore, it is a time in which there's just a lot of strong emotions. So I had these text message exchange with my mother, and then a bad text message exchange with her, and then my father. He called me, and he sounded like he was drunk, and that's the only time he'll call when he's drunk. So that can't be an accident. Those are spiritual attacks, and you can't necessarily get away from it by just staying off the internet. Because, like I said, I went to Alamosa, and then I'm dealing with that there. Sometimes I wonder if they were targeting me on social media here when I got here. I have a feeling that they do that. And that's basically how they maintain their KKK maintenance, and they won't actually realize that I'm a person that keeps away crime. It's real sad, but that's basically what we're seeing right now in Ireland with these migrants being beat up. That's basically what we're seeing right now in UK, and Crestone is a great example of the status quo. It's going to be fantastic continuing to blog about it, write books about it, and nobody's here to invite me to a single gathering where there is any alleged. They just like to lie and go, "Oh, we like black people, so awesome, we're so awesome." No, Lori, you're not awesome. You're part of the establishment. You're part of the clique. You're part of the inner circle. You're part of the elite. And that's what these people don't understand. The elite want Colorado for their own interests. They want to run out people that want to be a resistance in the future for the collapse they're building for America. They want a lot of people ignorant and not informed that there is a collapse. They want people just focused on what Facebook's saying. And then, of course, you'll have people still using Facebook in small towns to communicate back and forth without realizing that all this internet stuff is toxic, is driving people insane. And they're not educating people here in Crestone at the Dark Sky Vortex or any of that. They make it all about fun and games. They don't go, "Hey, did you realize there was a massive solar flare this week and you people were fighting and arguing and drinking alcohol and throwing bottles at each other?" No, that's negative. So I will be the one who will go down in history, who is the guy who was basically invisible for a certain amount of time, who actually behind the scenes, I'm a heavy hitter. I'm basically affirming a beam of energy up to the heavens, which is what people are already into here. Pyramids and building pyramids in the Baka. Like when you talk about my interests that overlay supposedly with the supposed Crestonian one, it's in the dozens to hundreds. It ranges from interest in art, interest in Buddhism, interest in meditation. It doesn't matter if I and Crestonians have hundreds of things in interest. Nobody's like me from my dad's place here. And the people that were here long ago were driven out. They've been driven out. The Sufis used to live here. I cyclically pick up on it. They've been driven out from the cliques. They've been driven out. So, in order to actually survive as an outsider, you have to be super scion and spiritual, especially if you're a podcaster. Do you know of any podcasters in Crestone? Exactly. Do you know of how many authors do you know just walking around that know about solar flares? That they can easily give information. Exactly. So I can go into any town and be the one person who's one in a billion because I am. I am the return to the one. After all these psychic attacks that have come upon me, I'm now going to be as grandiose as possible because it's going to be balls to the wall. This is what happens to nonviolent oppressed people. We have to turn to magic and full on confidence in a world where people say that we're nothing. We literally have to turn to the powers of the mind when the odds are against us. And having a psychic X who has it in for me, who likes to get inside my head and call me worthless, that's heavy fire right now under my seat. That has me really going in a big, big way. Did I tell you that some strange kid the other day came up to me and gave me a hug? It was the scariest thing that ever happened. I was like, "Oh my god, it's a demonic attack." He looked so innocent. I was like, "Okay, that's amazing." That he came up and but I was actually quite suspicious. Okay, so I'm gonna wrap things up here. So 15 minutes of blabbing here. Have a good night.